evolving environment where we are working more closely with commercial providers, and that's a discussion we need to have upfront and to be mindful of the requirements we have going into the conversation with industry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. Senator Fischer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Abercrombie and Mr. Cholet and your families for stepping forward to continue to serve your country. I appreciate that. Mr. Cholet, China remains the pacing threat that we face, and do you believe that the department is appropriately postured to meet that threat?
Senator Fischer, thanks for the question and thanks for the time the other day in your office. I really appreciated the conversation. I know that the Defense Department is working hard at getting at that threat. If confirmed, one of the first things I will do on the job is open up the hood and make my own assessment of how we are doing. But I know that there's been a tremendous amount of investment and energy put into this. But the PRC, as you said, is rapidly innovating and modernizing, and that's why it is the pacing challenge we face for this century.
How do you believe the department should balance the readiness that's needed today with the modernization that we have to look for in the long term?
Thanks for the question. We have to have the urgency to innovate and invest, and we need to ensure that we are investing in the future. So it is a very difficult balancing act. It's one that will be foremost on my mind if confirmed in this position, because of course we have the threats of today that are very urgent and complex, but even more concerning are the threats of tomorrow.
How do you think the department should prioritize those investments?
Well, I think in some ways it's going to be case by case because it's going to be balancing risk across regions, across priorities. My sense from looking at it from the outside across the river over the last several years is it's been balancing it relatively effectively, thanks to the cooperation and support and the leadership of many in the Congress. I think in the Indo-Pacific, for example, the Pacific Deterrence Initiative has been a very great innovation, and I'm glad the Defense Department has invested so much in this recent budget in PDI.
How much risk would you be willing to assume, and how do you balance that, or are you risk averse?
We're going to have to balance some risk. There's no question. I mean, there's risk in whether we're looking at what we're doing in Europe to help support Ukraine, whether we're doing in the Indo-Pacific, building up our alliances and partnerships and posturing ourselves to deter the PRC, or the risk we live with every day in the Middle East. It's a constant effort to try to balance the risk and get it right.
What are your thoughts on the National Defense Strategy?
I think the 2022 National Defense Strategy is quite strong, and I think it's a natural continuation of the 2018 National Defense Strategy, which, to my mind, was a pivot point from the counterterrorism, global war on terror, 2 decades more or less, to this new era of great power competition. So I see continuity between 2018 strategy and 2022. I know that the National Defense Commission is getting its work underway to assess our implementation of the strategy. I know the commissioners, many of the commissioners quite well, and have spoken to them at length, and so I'll look forward to cooperating with their efforts as their work proceeds.
Well, let me continue on the National Defense Strategy, and then I'll get to the Commission also. Some of the main tenets that we see in the National Defense Strategy, for example, the importance of campaigning or exercising with partners in the Indo-Pacific, those have been undercut, I believe, by budget requests that don't come close to fully funding these planned exercises. If confirmed, will you advocate for additional resources when they're needed, when you have those discussions with the administration?
Senator Fischer, thanks for the question. Yes, I believe that one of the most important things we can do in the Indo-Pacific is to ensure that we have the strongest alliances and partnerships possible. There has been a lot of progress made over the last 2 years to develop those relationships further and create new configurations of partnerships through AUKUS and the Indo-Pacific Quad. But absolutely, I will fight for those resources if confirmed.
How do you think we can better strengthen those alliances? When we're watching what's going on in Ukraine and the NATO alliance that we have there, my concern is when something would take place in the Indo-Pacific region, we won't have the strength of as many allies as we currently have. And you brought it up in your opening comments that we currently have seen formed and strengthened in Europe with Ukraine. So how are we going to strengthen those partnerships in the Indo-Pacific to make sure that not only they continue, but that they continue to be built?
Senator Fischer, I think it's absolutely critical that we strengthen and build the muscle tissue of those alliances and partnerships in the Indo-Pacific. I'll just cite 3 examples, recent ones. The work we've been doing with the Japanese and the Koreans in the trilateral format, trying to strengthen the ties between the two of them, but also trilaterally has been critically important. Second, AUKUS, of course, is an innovative, game-changer, strategic pivot that is very, very important. We need to work together to implement that and get the optimal pathway off and running. And then third, the Indo-Pacific Quad, which this administration has elevated to the leaders level, and it's become more and more an engine of our work in the Indo-Pacific. Those are 3 examples. There's many others that, if confirmed, I need to work to ensure that we're moving the ball downfield.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Senator King, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.